All right.
Let me refresh my YouTube. Refresh.
All right, so welcome everybody, because I think it's recording now, even though it's not officially posted yet. So if you're watching this not live, this is a welcome. Would you guys introduce yourselves while I start putting clay on the head bust?
I'm Christy, Dynasty 12.
And I'm Eric on YouTube as, I don't know.
Eric is actually local to me, and he has done haunts on and off with me for, I don't know, 10, 12 years or so.
Yeah.
So if one of you guys could grab the Google Plus page and handle any questions from there, because it makes an event page when we do this. So there's going to be Google Plus questions, and there's also going to be questions on YouTube. And basically, I cannot monitor pretty much anything because my hands are covered in clay.
Gotcha.
Right.
Is my volume all right? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Let me see.
Yeah. Is it the chat button?
I do not know. I can help you with nothing. Grab the Google Plus page. Oh, so that's somebody's volume is up. Because it makes an event page when we do this.
It might be Eric. Mine's muted.
No, I have headphones on.
There's going to be questions on YouTube, and basically I cannot monitor much anything because my hands are covered in clay.
Gotcha.
Right.
Is my volume all right? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good deal.
Huh. Is it the chat button?
I do not know. I can help you with nothing. Grab the Google Plus page. Oh, so that's somebody's volume. It's up. So, for the record,
Might be Eric. Mine's muted.
you two are here because I don't know what I'm doing.
Excellent.
I think that's Eric because I just muted myself and it didn't stop.
I've got headphones on and it can't be looping back.
Is my volume all right? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Uh-oh.
I can help you out. So that's somebody's volume. It's up. So
Do you have Google Plus open as well, Alan?
because I don't know what I'm doing on YouTube. This is the worst ever. Did that do it?
Yes.
You know what? If you posted the YouTube link, it was auto-playing on Facebook
Oh, gotcha.
on my other window. So I didn't have YouTube open, but Facebook was open, so it probably auto-played. I apologize about the craziness. There's no way that I can go back and edit these, so I will just look like a giant boob on the internet, which is not new or rare. So I am basically, I have a plaster head bust that happens to be of me, and I am putting a good 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of clay on it. So I'm going to have to pare down a little bit, and also latex masks will shrink. Latex, when it's wet, it shrinks down as it cures or dries.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, so it's normally about 10-15%. Sometimes as much as 20%. The slower that it cures, the less it shrinks, I have found. And that is a fact based on what I have learned in my garage. So scientists might say that I am wrong, but if it's hot out, it shrinks more. If it's cold out or wet out, it shrinks less. So normally I do the daubs of clay on to cover the whole thing, and this time I'm kind of doing sheet. And I probably should be doing the daubs of clay because just like right here, you can kind of see that I'm going to get air pockets and voids. I mean, that's a lot of just air in there. So I probably should be doing the little daubs, but most people do the sheets like this. and I just happen to want to get it done right now and get clay on it so I can start moving it around. I'm going to make a Krampus. Krampus is, I guess, one of my more recent passions. I kind of heard about him in books a while ago, and I started making Krampus costumes and masks. And I have a good Krampus mask mold now. And basically, I'm just making this so I have a second Krampus mask mold. And another thing with the sheets, like I've got a real thin area right here, and I've got a thick area on each side of it. So I'm going to have to do a little more filling in. If I just did dots all over the place, then I wouldn't have that worry or that extra work. I would know how thick it was all over because I just put a dot there. I'm going to thicken this up. And of course, you know, your balance is affected too because you know, the wire goes through the clay over here, and you can see that's not flat. I tried to drag it flat and straight, but what ends up happening is that as this wire waves, I get thicker and thinner pieces of clay. So I kind of have to then work to make it symmetrical, because even though I have one layer on, it's not all exactly the same thickness. So that'll change the symmetry of your sculpt. I'm using water-based clay. It is not wet. It's just water-based. It's white modeling clay. It's commonly referred to as garbage clay. I think Monster Maker sells it just for clay walls, which I do use it for clay walls, but I also use it to sculpt with. It's the cheapest clay around, and it does neat pretty well. It doesn't do as well on small details like teeth. I find that often I'll do a mouth and then I'll sculpt the teeth separately in something like monster clay, which will hold a sharp point a little bit more. And this time I'm just covering up everything and then I'll cut them out where I think the eyes ought to be. And I'm trying to patch in all the areas that I know I'm going to want clay to be.
Most fascinated by clay.
I think it's important that you start on a bust, on a head form that is correct in scale, because if you just start with a wad of clay on a stick, your proportions might look good, but they're not going to be as accurate. We have a mask at Dark Hour that I know was sculpted by George Shell from a wad on a stick. And great looking mask, great sculpture, but it's not a good mask because it's very, very uncomfortable to wear. Because the face is, you know, a little bit exaggerated and it doesn't fit a person. If I start with a hunk of plaster under here that I know has the features of a person, then I know that a person's head can fit under there comfortably without changing a lot. And this is a super simple part of the process. Right now, I have no visual references whatsoever. I know I want a Krampus as the end result, you know, a Christmas demon. I know what those look like. Because I know what those look like, and there's some universal features, you know. I almost always do a heavy brow, you know, that bends down for anger. I'm going to do an elongated chin on this, which will be a little bit of work because I have a pretty fat head. My head is very round, so having to elongate it, I'm going to have to do a little more sculpting than I normally do.
You don't have a fat head. You have an awesome brain, and it needs a lot of room.
My brain needs room. That's why I look like Charlie Brown. Big old head. So I'm using a popsicle stick kind of as a spoke shave, and I'm just getting the clay a lot smoother. Because I want to find the real shapes that are in there, and I don't want to have to fight trying to see it be smooth when it's not, so it's easier to kind of smooth it out at this stage. The end sculpt will not be smooth. It will not be. You need to have a lot of texture in your end sculpt. But right now, I kind of want smoothness, so I can pick which features to focus on. Hello, wife. Well, I am working. My wife just got home. It's awesome.
Hey.
Krampus mask.
Hi. What you making?
Krampus mask.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Hi, huh?
And now we have dogs. And everybody's in the garage.
Wow. Hi, baby.
Awesome.
Come on. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
How warm is it there?
Wife, what temperature is it? 70?
60-ish.
60?
Nice.
It's maybe it's not 70, but I have the garage door open because it's raining outside. It's kind of nice out.
It's 60 in Fort Worth.
Okay, maybe it's 60.
35 here.
Oh,
35.
wow.
It was 19 yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cold. At least we're not in Buffalo. That's a good thing. I feel for anybody in Buffalo right now.
Yeah, my buddy Tim is in Buffalo, and I posted on his Facebook. I said, "You want to get away and come? If you can get away and come to Texas, you're more than welcome." Because yeah, pretty rough in Buffalo. So Ruffalo. All right, so I'm using a popsicle stick right now. I'm going to pull the eyes out just so I can see the actual eye of the person who's in there. Because this is going to be a mask that's going to be worn. Yeah, when I sculpt eyes in and then paint them, it looks cooler, but it's not as comfortable of a mask. I hurt the vision of it, and I don't want to do that. I took a little more out on this side. Stone sculpting was purely a subtractive process. When they take a hunk of stone and they whittle it away and they whittle it away, whittling, that's a subtractive process. Sculpture with clay is both a subtractive and an additive process because I can take away and I can add to it. And because of that and how swiftly you can do it, I am never afraid to modify a sculpture. I'm not afraid to just play with it. We are making mud pies in a shape that is pleasing to us. This is mud. It's harvested from a riverbed, you know? So we're making mud pies that we like. That's it. I'm not gonna. You can't get all pretentious that I spent all this time on it and I don't want to mess up what I did. Well, you know what? You just made a mud pie. Just fix it. Especially if there's something wrong, it's gonna bug you for the rest of your life. And if it doesn't, it should. I will say for all, because now I see that we have like 18 viewers or so on YouTube watching. Feel free to ask any question anytime during the process. Doesn't have to be about this, but it's nice when it is about this, and I will answer. I have Christy and Eric both watching for questions, so feel free to post or just say hi, and they will pass your messages along. All right, that's a good smooth base. I do want to try to find where my mouth is a little bit. Not because I'm going to use the actor's mouth. That's not dramatic enough for a Krampus, but just because I want. Okay. I just want to know where it is. That way I can line up breathing and stuff a lot easier. And I was guessing low for the mouth, because that right there is the bottom lip. And so I want that space between the lips, of course, right there. So I got at the store the other day some sculpting tools. And a sponge, very important for water. This is a set of rakes, and they have teeth. This is a squared off end for flat raking, and they all have a round end for gouging. And there's two types that I will show you. One has big teeth for roughness, and the other one has much finer teeth. So I'll be using these very shortly pare down areas and to make other areas, just more level. I also picked up a clay extruder because I killed my other one. Basically, I can pack clay into here, and I can use these different ends, like the old Play-Doh factory machine, to squeeze out different shapes. Great for making veins and stuff like that, because it's a very simple round one, makes a nice vein. I am using a very soft clay. It's very easy to manipulate. So I have some rubber-ended tools or silicone-ended tools, and what they do is they make a soft impression. And these two tools, I think, are the most useful of all the shapes that they have, and they're the softest that they make because this clay is so soft. They won't work very well at all on oil-based clay, which is much firmer. And then I have another one here, which is it's kind of the same tool, but it's on each end.
Oh.
As opposed to being separate.
And Gary Pintel says, we're making mud pies that are pleasing to us. Love the attitude, like Bob Ross and a happy little accident.
Yeah, it's mud. We're moving around mud to make monsters. I think that's pretty cool. A different shaped kidney for scraping. I use these guys all the time from Harbor Freight for flat, but I thought this might be good for curves. And here is a big rake. I'm going to open it up, actually, here.
Oh, wow.
It's big. But if you're sculpting something like all the dinosaurs on Jurassic Park, you need something huge that's really going to move some clay. I worked with Matt Marich a few months back, and he had some really big tools like this, and I wanted them. I coveted them. And he left and took them with him. So I had to get my own. And I bought these actually a few weeks ago, so I completely forget what's in this bag, which is exciting. It's like Christmas, early.
Dust has a question. Is there a standard size for masks? My head is so small, it is always a struggle to find masks that fit me and don't look weird. So any mask I tend to make will fit me and not many others. I'm just wondering how sizing is usually done in mask making when you don't have a cast of the person you're making it for.
That's actually a great question, and unfortunately the answer is there is no standard sizing. It's whatever size head form they happen to sculpt it on, and then did they build it up in order to account for shrinkage or not? A lot of people's first masks are very small, they're very tight. Because they didn't account for that shrinkage a little bit. They didn't put quite enough clay on there. But if you have a smaller head and you want to make masks for you, or if you want other people to make masks for you, look for any that are made on a CFX head form. Silicone stretches quite a bit, way more than latex. So a silicone mask can get away with being a little smaller. Pretty often, you'll see a silicone mask on a bigger guy like myself, and the sculpt looks a little stretched out. I don't know if you guys have seen that or noticed that before. It's like, yeah, that's a vampire, but it looks like it's a vampire over top of a basketball because that silicone stretches so much. So, and they have a small head form, they use that, or else it'll wobble. Some of the early SPFX masks, the first silicone mask company, their masks were a little on the big side. They fit me great, but not actually because I have a really short neck. There's a lot of variables to consider, and the best thing that you can do is find a mask company, because Be Something Studios masks are all a little bit tight on me. Be Something, they're not that anymore. Now they're Zagone Studios. They're all a little bit tight on me. But then if you go over to Trick or Treat Studios, they all kind of have that same feel and size, or they might use the same head form. Trick or Treat Studios are perfect. They fit me very well. So it depends on the company and who made it and all that. So there is no standard sizing. If you're lucky, in the description, the artist or the company will say made for a smaller head. So look out for that. Sorry I couldn't help you anymore. All of these tools are kidneys. Different flexibility to them. This is a rubber kidney. It's very flexible. This is one of the most common kinds. There's metal kidneys. This is not a new one, obviously, and it basically it's just for scraping clay. There's a flat side. There's a round side. These are new ones that are serrated. So it's going to do a great job of leveling out and actually kind of excavating that clay. Can I get like Inception, give you guys like a mirror of yourself?
Oh, you got a new webcam.
Yeah, it's a HD webcam. It's kind of snappy. I was trying to up the game. Again, just more kidneys. And these are kind of the big deal. These are what you do a lot of your detail with. These are wire loop tools.
Oh, yeah.
Now that's a pretty tiny one. That's a good size one. It's got a pointy end on the other side. And these are all just different angles of points and roundness for these loop tools. You know, and this one has a flat side too. And I actually use this a lot. Instead of my thumb, I'll get in there and I'll just kind of do this and make nice gouges in the clay. So show and tell of my new toys is over. I think I spent $60 for all that on sculpting tools. This was kind of last weekend up haunt, I think, you know, hoping I'd have more time to sculpt. So now I am looking at this head. Probably doesn't call for anything this large. So I'm going to go to this guy, the rough-toothed scraper, and I'm going to look. I'm just going to look at it and see what side needs to come down a little bit in order to make them even. I'm going to even out the sculpture before I really even do anything to it. Because if I don't start even, then I have to add different amounts of clay to each side, which makes it harder. So if I can smooth it out right now, it makes my life easier. And this is kind of the back of the head looks like a sack of potatoes. This side is very smooth and round, and there's a huge bulge right here. So I'm going to take care of this guy right away because it is very obviously not the same as the other side. Some sculptors will tell you that symmetry is not as important because nothing is symmetrical in nature. While they are true, often it is so close to symmetrical that you can't tell with your eye that it's not. No two ears are exactly the same on people, but no one notices the differences between those two ears because it's pretty close. If we sculpt it as perfectly symmetrical as we can to a reasonable degree, then we're going to be as asymmetrical as nature most of the time. Of course, you can be perfectly symmetrical. It's possible, but it's pretty unlikely. And it's really tough. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm using this tool both ways, kind of down and across, in order to show me where the high areas are. I can show you guys over here. See those divots right there? If I'll get a smaller tool here. When I run across, it doesn't go in the divot. You know, you can see a texture on there, but not in that divot. So I want to go across both ways in order to make, now that's much smoother, and it's easier for me to smooth that out with something like a kidney, and I want to use a real flexible kidney, and now I can just get rid of those rake marks, and it leaves me with a real nice, even clay surface. And that's going to allow me to see detail well and choose what detail I put on here. You kind of have some happy accidents as far as bumps and gouges and little seams and stuff that happen in the clay, and I don't mind those. I let more of those slide than some sculptors, but you also want to choose the details that you keep. You shouldn't sculpt everything with the foreknowledge of knowing it's going to look like it has a skin condition because you didn't smooth it out right. Not there's anything wrong with having a skin condition. Trying to be PC, you know. All right, so I'm a lot happier with the back of the head. Hopefully you guys can see it's a little smoother. actually from the camera angle now, I see that this side is pretty flat down, and this side actually bows out. It curves a bit, so I am going to fix that. And that is happening right in this area. I'm fixing the silhouette. If I fix the silhouette from every angle, then I have fixed the sculpture. Silhouette being the outline that I see from one particular angle. Now I can go back this way and smooth this sucker out.
Oh, weird.
So it's Saturday, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I actually was supposed to be at a promo tonight, but they canceled the event due to weather. Looks like it was a good call because it's been raining all day.
Hmm.
So now that event is tomorrow, and I had already had plans for tomorrow. So I get to sculpt. Hooray!
Yay! Gary Pinkow also says, for beginners, there are also a lot of cake decorating tools and appliances that work great too. My wife took a few Wilton decorating classes a while back. Now I use some of the silicone tools and kidneys for sculpting in addition. With the wet clay, you can use a piping bag and tips much in the same way as the clay extruder. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little firmer, so you got to have some decent hand strength to get it out a little bit. But
Yeah.
yes, you can. All right, I'm even enough now where I feel comfortable carrying on. I've still got a lot going on here as far as, just here. I'm not going to smooth it all the way down with a sponge. I don't feel the need to do that. So there we go. I'm going to take off my wedding ring because every time I touch the clay, that's going to leave a mark that I'll have to either work around, fix. And I'm just going to start with shapes. I'm going to do cheekbones. I'm trying to watch my time. It's 8:30. So a quarter of my time on this sculpt was just getting that first layer on and smoothing out. And hopefully I can get my basic structure done in the next hour, next half an hour, and then I'll have time in order to actually detail it for the whole last hour. So 1 hour for the rough in, and then another hour for the detail, getting it finished, making it look good. Anybody can throw clay on this and mold it. You want to make it look like you spent some time. Have it be the only one. I understand people's love and passion for characters like Michael Myers and Jason. But if I want a Michael Myers mask or a Jason mask, I will buy one because there are some good ones out there. I do not feel the need to make the same thing again. And even, yes, I understand that the one in scene 47 of part 6 is different from the one in scene 32 of part 4, but I don't care that much. I'm a haunted house guy. It's going to be in the dark. People are going to be running from it, and accuracy is great. If I have just offended your sensibilities, I understand, but I'm not going for the same results. Every monster is a chance to make something new, something awesome that was in your head and is now walking around. He was in, Wes Craven's. Freddy was in Wes Craven's head, so that's his monster. Great. I'm going to make my monsters. Occasionally, I do some repro work. Eric does some great repro work for props and stuff on a bunch of different things with a very old friend of mine, Scott, and that's great. It's a big call for it, and I've actually got some pieces from him because it's kind of cool to own that stuff. But I don't think I would make it because it's not what I'm into.
Actually, I don't care for much doing it much either, but I think it's a living.
Yeah, people like it, Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to turn someone down when they want to give you money for it.
Sure.
I've done lots of jobs I didn't particularly care for. So I will show you guys the pile of filth that is my sculpting tool bin here. It's just got everything is kind of piled on it. That's a delicious beverage. I'll move that out of the way. So
Rum chata.
It's rum chata and root beer, which kind of tastes like a root beer float. It's delicious. All right, and what I was looking for was popsicle sticks. This one in particular. They're actually dental suppressors. The kind that you kind of check the gagging with and whatnot, look at your tonsils. But I use them for sculpting tools quite a bit because I can cut the ends and make different shapes as I gouge it through clay. And I'm going to kind of work on the shape of the nose. Noses are a big deal. Every person on the planet is an expert in what noses look like because everybody's got one. And they see hundreds and thousands of them every day. Well, maybe you don't see hundreds. You see thousands of them every day. I went too big. But, you know, you see thousands of them every day. You see hundreds of them every day. So you have to kind of get them right. Or have it be so alien looking and different that that the concept grabs. But it still has to kind of be a nose, or they're not going to get it. And almost all the nostrils on my masks are about this big as the end of my thumb, because I will shove my thumbs here, and I'm kind of building the nostril around my thumb. I can then relax it after the fact, you know, by pushing in a little bit or lengthening out, but I start with my two thumbs as a pivot point and let my hands do the work around them in order to get that nose. Now, this being a Krampus, I want a mouth full of teeth. So where this mouth is, that's like a guideline. I have to make sure I have access to that. It's not going to be straight on. So I'm going to sculpt the bottom of his mouth down around here, even though the actual mouth is there. Because I want just a bigger head. I want a big open mouth. That's scary. The bigger the mouth, the bigger the teeth I can put in it. Bigger the teeth, the scarier it is.
Gary says it looks like Hawkman's cowl.
Like Hawkman?
Like Hawkman's cowl.
I could possibly see that. Got those sharp cheekbones. I'm a sharp cheekbone guy. I like me some cheekbones. I'm going to throw a bottom lip on to remind me where I want that mouth to live. And a lot of times I'm putting clay on right now. That's a note. It's not what it's going to be. This is not going to look like this. But I want brows on it, so I put that on there. So it's a little reminder that I have to put the brows in. And it would look really silly without those. I've done no work on them, but it kind of changes that sculpt considerably when you just pull the brows off. I'm going to grab something to elevate the camera just a little bit, just because I feel that you maybe not have the best angle, and I want you guys to have the best angle. I will be a moment.
If everyone wants to load up on questions, now's a good opportunity.
It appears that we are not being inundated with questions. That's fine too, because it also appears that I never stop talking. I am a chatty ass. All right. So there, I think that might be a little bit better angle for you guys to see what's going on. You can move a little bit closer to me, just so you guys can see a little better.
Much better.
Yeah, there you go. All right, yeah, I'm real happy with the HD camera. That does help. And I have my phone nearby so I can pull up pictures, because I might pull up a reference for eyebrows in order to get this brow ridge. Someone else has done it right, either in a picture or in a sculpt, and I can look it up and have that guide me in what I am doing. One really useful thing to search for, there's a sculpting program called ZBrush, where, are you guys looking like directly into my ear? If so, I apologize. I don't think I have developed old man ear hair yet, but I really wouldn't know.
No, we can tell.
Yeah, you guys know. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Seems like the body just, hurts you. Anyway, a good thing to look up is ZBrush galleries. So look up Ogre, Orc, ZBrush gallery. It'll show you a bunch of ogres and a bunch of orcs. Demon, ZBrush gallery. Google image search that, and you'll get so many cool images of digital sculptures which have tons of detail. They're really nice. And it's, right there. I think the most important sculpting tool you can have is a Google image search. It really does a lot.
New YouTube question from Lunar Black Lily. Alan, are you a self-taught sculptor or did you take classes?
I had the obligatory high school art class in ceramics where you got to touch clay. Most of my sculpture is kind of self-taught, but I don't know if there's anything, I don't really like the term self-taught. Often the clay teaches me how to sculpt. Often other people teach me how to sculpt. Lots of people that I've worked with have been good sculptors, and I learn everything I can from them. So I'm kind of self-taught, but if other people were in the room while I was sculpting, I'm going to give them credit, because it's very hard to teach yourself something, in a vacuum. And with the internet, no one's in a vacuum now. A great resource is the Stan Winston School of Character Design. Really great resource for sculpting. I guess I was self-taught, but if I reached the apple on top of the tree, it's because I was standing on someone else's shoulders. Did I make any sense just then? I hope I did.
Yeah.
All right, so now it's looking weird to me because I don't have ears on it. I want to get some ears on it. And just kind of a note. I want to make a note that to add ears. They're not going to be the finished product ears.
Gary brought up a good question. He says, I know I will have questions, but I don't want to get ahead of the action. Things like casting the mask, building up the negative mold, thinning edges to blend, etc. I said with the casting of the mask, and usually that part you tend to do on blogs.
Yeah, I've got a lot of videos on that on YouTube. I don't mind doing another one. I have a YouTube channel. I don't mind doing another one. Yeah, probably soon I'll do another molding a mask video. I want to show you guys something about ears. This is going to be a very rough representation of an ear. But an ear should be roughly halfway between the back of the head and the front of the head. And it should start, the ear should connect to the head in an even line with the corner of the eye. That's for humans. Okay, that should be a straight line. The bottom, now remember my mouth is off because I messed up where the mouth was because I'm changing the concept. But the bottom of the ear should go to that center line of the mouth. So if you look at yourself, it should be just above that center line of the mouth. Maybe like right here, top of the top lip. If you kind of look in the mirror, you'll see that that's where ears go. If you want to make this look like a gorilla or a monkey, they have much smaller ears. and they're not set that high up. They match the lower, so that's not a bad spot for a monkey's ear, but it's a terrible spot for a human ear. They're smaller ears, and they're lower. If you want to give this guy almost a werewolf feel, just a little bit, go up a little bit more. Now that's not a pointed ear, so it looks ridiculous. But that dog, that canine ear placement is definitely up on top of the head.
Huh?
And you can go further back, and in silhouette, it'll have a cat-like feel.
Yeah.
So ear placement is huge. I think eyebrows are one of the most important placements of things because it determines the mood of the piece. Obviously, I put an angry brow on him. If I do his brow not so angry, he looks
Oh boy.
slightly worried, right? He looks concerned, you know. If you do it the opposite of that, he kind of goes a little sad.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of expression that you can get from eyebrows. You know, eyebrows do a lot for your sculpture. So that a lot of the emotion comes from there. Emotion is up in here, and your intent is down in here. Whether they're angry, I mean, whether they want to hurt you, whether they, you know, whether they're going to run away, that happens kind of in the mouth there.
Dean Ray asks, can I ask, if it's easy to explain while he is sculpting? Oh, I know how to get the negative mold when you cover it with plaster, but once I have the negative mold in plaster, how do I fill it to be just a mask and not a full head? Do I put the head that I sculpted in the mold?
I understand the question. No. You have to think in the negative. This is going to be the negative space. So there's going to be... There's going to... That's Eric. Something's going on with his mic or whatever. But there's going to be a hole that is shaped just like this face. Just like this head. There's going to be a hole shaped that way. So that's what your mold is. And when you put the mold together, you turn it upside down, it's then a big bowl. And the opening of that bowl, the rim of that bowl, this glass is the mold, this is the neck. And the top of the head is all the way down here at the bottom. So in order to not make this full, there's latex. The reason why I make molds out of plaster, number one, it's a liquid, then it turns into a solid in time. That's great. That's how it catches the detail, and that's why we don't carve it into stone negatively. But the reason why we use plaster is plaster absorbs moisture, and the plaster absorbs the moisture from, I'm having a hard time saying the word moisture. It absorbs the moisture from the latex, causing the latex that's touching the plaster to skin up and become solid. But the stuff in the center doesn't skin up and doesn't become solid. So the longer you leave it in the mold, the thicker that mask gets. That's called dwelling. I dwell my masks for about an hour. That's how long it takes for me to get them to a decent thickness. You know, thinner mask, they're going to dwell for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, and they're going to be a real thin mask. Hour, hour and a half, not uncommon. But I want my mask to kind of take a beating. So the process of turning it upside down, you strap the mold together, you fill it up to the top with latex, all the way up to that neck hole you fill with latex. And then you wait an hour and a half, you pour it out. Leave it alone, let it dry, set it upside down to drain, and then 24 hours later, that ought to be dry if you had a fan on it or if it was in sunlight. It ought to be dry enough to peel out of the mold. Sometimes it takes.
Weird.
So then when it's dry, you can then powder the inside of it because latex will stick to itself. You powder the inside of it, and then you peel it out. And then you have your mask. And that's how it is a mask that is not filled all the way up.
You powder the inside of the mask before you peel it out?
Yes.
Oh.
Because the latex will stick to itself.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can start pulling it out, and one side will stick to the other, and then it's this terrible-looking bag that you made.
Gotcha.
It ruins everything.
So, message on YouTube from Mutt R. I sent him a response, but he might have a different answer for this. Is there a cheap or free alternative to ZBrush for people who aren't using the program to make money? Can't afford $700 for the program.
Absolutely. There's lots of sculpting programs, and you can find sculpting apps. Just Google around a little bit. I don't have ZBrush, but I don't use it. I only look up the pictures that other people have made. I can look at the forms, the cheekbones, the jaws. That's what I look for. So, yes, there's alternatives out there. ZBrush is not the only one. Like there's other things that do what Photoshop does. That's just the most common one. It's like Q-tip. We call all Q-tips now Q-tips, but really they're cotton swabs, and Q-tip is a brand name. ZBrush is just the most popular brand name, so that's what I have to say. But digital sculpting, there's lots of different versions. There's a poser program, which is very nice. I have used one. I'm trying to think of the name of it now. I forget, but there's lots of 3D sculpting programs out there. All right, all that talk about ears, and I haven't put them on yet, so I'm putting my ear clay together here.
Yeah. And Dee says, awesome, thank you so much. I've been missing that part forever. I didn't understand how that worked.
I have one video on my YouTube channel called Lobster Boy. I know, it's a weird name, but that's what the mask was. It actually shows in 20 minutes the sculpting. It's all fast-forwarded. The sculpting, the molding, the cleaning out of the mold, the pouring up of the latex, and it shows kind of everything in the process. All right, and I have actually a wad of clay in each hand, and I'm doing both ears at the same time. I'm a little bit ambidextrous, but really I'm just using my left hand to mimic my right. Anything my right does, I make my left do. That's an easy way to cheat using with your other hand. So I'm getting kind of the same result on both sides at the same time.
New question from D. Dust. I'd be interested in video on edges. I know it's usually not as important in masks, or it is easier to deal with them anyway. But I'd like to hear any tips you have for getting good edges on prosthetic applications you make.
Well, the edge of the prosthetic is determined in the molding process, not as much in the sculpt. It's really easy in the sculpt to take your edge and make it nice and smooth. The trick then is to make what is called a cutting edge. Let's pretend that my sculpt does this. All right. And so I'm going to have a mold, and I'm going to have a negative, and this is the edge of it. Maybe like right here is the eye, maybe a little bit in like that. But yeah, maybe, okay, so right there is the eye, and that's the edge. When I actually mold, I have to put down a cutting edge. Easiest way to do that is with a tool found in here. At least I think it's in here. I'm hoping it is. This is my clay extruder that I got and I was telling you guys about, which is basically the Play-Doh factory toy. And it has all of these little discs which fit in here. I'm looking for a disc that is square. And I have one. So now, as I mold, gotta set this up. Wasn't quite planning to do this, but I don't mind showing that at all. Put my extruder tip in the front of it. I'll go ahead and screw that on. I'll hold that in place. And now I can kind of Play-Doh factory out a square bit of clay. Tie it up. Use my plunger.
Oh, cool.
Now, this will be called a cutting edge. I'm going to do it 1/8 of an inch off of that prosthetic. And now, when I mold, my excess foam or silicone has a place to go, and I have a great severing point in between where my sculpt ends and the plaster of the bust. I hope that makes sense, but you kind of have to outline your whole sculpt in this cutting edge. It tells you where to cut. And actually on foam, I never cut. I just kind of peel this off with my hands, and that gives me a nice ripped, real light feathered edge, which is easy to blend. So a cutting edge, that is what makes the edge different.
Very cool.
Now I will fix up my sculpt and have a drink. All right. Looking at my ears, they're a pretty good height. I like them, and I'm going to leave them alone for a bit. So I don't want to detail the ears. I just wanted to make a note to make sure I had them on there. And I'm definitely going to point them because I think Krampuses should have pointy ears and rather good-sized ears. I'm going to start toning down my... Oh, water-based clay dries out. So if I left this in here, I'm going to have a rock in here. So I kind of have to open this sucker up and clean it out while that clay is still moist, or else it's going to be harder to get out of there. Now I'm all clean, I can carry on. I don't want to leave that for tomorrow. Although it's raining, so clay's not going to dry out on me anytime soon. Cheekbones. My cheekbones are a bit harsh. I think they're too harsh, so I'm going to tone them down. I'm going to tone them down with my rake. I do want this to be a fantasy creature. I do want this to be larger than life. I'm not worried about perfect anatomy. What I'm worried about is symmetry in the sculpt itself and a good look. I tend to do my angles a little harsher than I should. I'm getting better with that, but it's still one of my issues. I'm a little dramatic in my sculpting, which is a nice way of saying cartoony. I'm a little on the cartoony side. I'm not a perfect sculptor. I would say I'm not a great sculptor, but I know I'm bad. I get the gist of it, and I keep trying. I say a lot, if I sculpt a duck, you know I was meaning to sculpt a duck, but you don't expect it to fly away. So, taking my eye bag down now. I'm just using the end of this to pinch this down. And I'm thinking as an actor the whole time that I'm sculpting, because I sculpt mostly for haunted houses. This mask is probably going to be in my haunted house. So I'm thinking about having to wear this. I'm thinking about if there's an eye hole that's this big, that's a great eye hole if it's right up against my eye. But if I move that eye hole out, the amount that I can see out of it gets smaller and smaller. So I'm going to have to cut all this in right under the eyes quite a bit. Often, I will pare down this area in here so I don't have stuff to seat over when I am wearing that mask, or if someone else is wearing the mask. But I think you're doing a disservice as a sculptor if you're not thinking about the performer a little bit. Does that limit my work? Yes. I'm not going to sculpt a monster head that a human head can't fit inside of when I'm making a mask. And I've heard folks say, pretty often, well, the latex will stretch. Well, then you've deformed your sculpt, and you're not getting a true representation of what you want out in the show. So why not just sculpt it where it's going to stay what you sculpted? I bet it kind of breaks the guys from CFX's heart and Immortal Mask. I bet it breaks their heart to see their mask stretched over a basketball-sized head. Looks like they tried to put, a monster on top of a beach ball. But nobody is making silicone masks right now for large-headed people.
You are.
They say they'll stretch. I don't make enough to make even a dent in the industry. I almost have stopped pursuing silicone. I haven't stopped, but I don't do it a lot or often. I certainly don't want... There's so many great artists making good silicone masks. The only thing I want them to do is make a bigger silicone masks. But then you limit your characters because one of my funny things that I remember is I was on a group called the Haunt Forum a while back. This was years ago. There was a company that was making skeleton costumes. And in their skeleton costumes, someone posted on, "Those look awesome. Do you make them in 3X?" And I replied, if someone is a 3X, no way are they going to look like a realistic skeleton. They're going to look ridiculous. How big does a skeleton structure have to be to fill out the size of a fleshed-out man who's a 3X? That's a little on the ridiculous side. So, you have to consider that kind of stuff. So if you're doing big masks, big silicone masks, your characters change. Every zombie's going to be a fat zombie. Every monster, they're going to have some beef. They're going to have some junk in their trunk because the guys who are wearing them do. And they could look silly.
Another question. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. You probably already see them.
Oh, okay. Lunar Black Lily, is the latex you pour back out of the mold still useful for another mask, or do you have to toss it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You need about 3 gallons to make a mask, because it's going to take about 2 to fill this up. This is going to be a lot of negative space. But you don't use 3 gallons to make a mask. You need 3 gallons. So it'll probably take...
Latex you recommend?
What's that?
Any particular latex you recommend?
I like the latex from both Bright Props and Screamline Studios. I often buy my latex in 55-gallon drums, so that's not necessarily a resource that most folks are going to go to. I go through about 2 55-gallon drums a year. So I use a lot of latex. But I make more masks than you. So, I mean, I get mine, and there's a bit of a savings when you buy it in bulk like that. But don't buy anything less than 5 gallons. Because the money for it goes up, it gets more expensive, and you need just about 5 gallons to make a mask. So if you're going to make a mask and you only have 1 gallon of latex, everything you do is going to be a brush-in, meaning instead of you don't have enough latex to fill up your mold with negatives, fill it up when it's upside down and empty. So then you have to brush layers in where you can't guarantee your thickness, and you'll have thin spots and thick spots in your mold. In your mask, I mean.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Bright Props is great. Screamline Studios is great. So interesting. Latex is a commodity. It's not one price. It's like you hear about the price of a barrel of oil changes. It's a commodity. So the price of a drum of latex changes. It goes back and forth with supply, demand, and a bunch of other factors. If you hear about hurricanes, thrashing Brazil and Costa Rica, well, that's rubber trees. So latex is going to go up. Just like oil, so stuff happens in the Middle East, price of oil is going up. It is a similar process. All right, so I am now at 9 o'clock. I feel kind of roughed in on this, but I want to show you guys something. Hang out right here, like you have a choice.
Will you be within earshot?
Yes, I am.
Okay, another question, Mutt R. Will you ever do a single video of a mask from sculpt to finished product? I'm thinking no.
I thought
From
you did
sculpt-
already.
From sculpt to what?
A single video of a mask from sculpt to finished product.
Lobster Boy. I've done it. The video is called Lobster Boy. It's the half mask. It's right here is where it is. It's all this part of the head. It doesn't cover the chin. So this is my old Krampus mask design. All right? I want to make sure that my new mask is different looking than this one. All right? So now I'm using a visual, because I already have this one. I've got this mold. I want a Krampus that looks different. So I'm going to make some changes in this design to make it go away from this. This one's being modified. I'm putting big ears on it for a bat costume, but that's neither here nor there. But there we go. So this nose that I worked on, I'm taking it off. Best way to mess up clay is with a wire. I'm going to take this sucker off.
Now, why are you taking it off? Because it looks too similar to the other mask?
Yeah, the other one had a human nose that was kind of pointed. So I'm going to change what his nose looks like. And I'm going to go just a little bit almost batty with the nose.
Gotcha.
Now he's looking a little less human. And I like that nose there. I'll take one of the smaller rake here, which is the same tool as this one, just smaller. It's for a gentler touch. And I'm going to work on the bridge of the nose area and just paring it down. A lot of sculpting is taking away because we put on too much. You think you're going to need this much clay, and then you put on too much, so you take it away, you take it away, you pare it back, till you get something that's realistic. We are dramatic in our thinking, so we put down dramatic amounts of clay.
Oh, he disappeared.
I did?
No, Eric will be back in probably. There he goes.
Okay. All right. So that feels different now. I'm on a different track here now, which is nice. All right, I put a cleft here in the nose. That's kind of fun. Now I'm going to start roughing in where some wrinkles and stuff ought to be, or some changes to this are going to go. Now, I'm not looking at anything, but I know that I've made over 350 masks. Sculpted, molded. I've done a lot of masks. I'm not going to look at a reference until the later stages of sculpting where I'm trying to nail wrinkles. I know where the nasal labial fold goes. You know, I know where that goes. I know where, you know, I know about the ocular cavity and how it ought to be. You know, the skull sockets and stuff. I know about that. So I'm keeping that in mind while I'm doing this work here. I'm kind of going willy-nilly, but I'm not going willy-nilly. I should have a visual reference in front of me. My main source of visual reference, of course, my computer or my iPad. I don't happen to have those with me. I'm not worried about it.
Here's a really good question. How susceptible is latex to freezing? I've been told not to buy latex over the winter months and have seen on websites like Monster Makers that if you do, have it shipped via air freight. That's from Graves of the Groves.
Most companies won't even ship it aside from you know, overnight or 2-day or whatever, because yeah, once it freezes, you made a 5-gallon bucket-shaped hockey puck, and that is expensive. You're looking at, you know, 160, 180 bucks for a giant piece of rubber, which would make a nice coffee table or an end table, I suppose, but it'll be no good for making masks. So, yeah. Now it's hard to buy after January, or in January for me, because even here, chance of it freezing is pretty high. I don't like that. I normally buy latex in the spring and the fall, just 'cause, and also that's when I need it. You know, I use all my latex for Trans World, and then I need more, so I buy it right then in the spring, and I use my latex for Haunt, so I get more in you know, September or so. And I've got all these grooves in here. I'm going to pull this off, let you guys see this a little bit closer. Sorry about the motion sickness, kids. So that's from my rake. As I smooth an area out, I get these rake lines. I can use a kidney to go over those, but what I often do is I just use a brush in water, and I can brush those away, and that'll give me a nice smooth surface. So that's what I'm doing to most of this sculpt, and you guys can kind of see that. Okay. So I'm doing now this smoothing on it with the brush to start thinking about skin texture. Start thinking about my major wrinkles and my minor wrinkles. I think Krampuses are kind of a great tradition. They're a great monster. I love them. So I want to have kind of a nice variety. So I have kind of I did these great lines, I think, in the nose here, and I'm going to carry that down through kind of in the chin a little bit. On that side of the face for sure. I'm just peeling out, you know, parts of the sculpt in order to make textural changes. Another thing that I can do to make some good texture changes in here is I can add bits of clay and then brush them in like they're kind of bumps, they're deposits or whatever.
Gary Panko asks, for a sculpt like Krampus, do you ever consider elements like hair, i.e. beard, wig, etc., while making the sculpt, or is that all considered after molding and casting once you're working with the latex?
I'm going to think about horns, and you guys are going to see me think about horns after a while. I'm not worried about hair. My facial structure does not change based on where hair grows. Now, as a person who's going to make a bunch of these masks, might I give the area that I'm going to glue hair to a little more texture? Yes, because then the glue is going to hold a little better. It'll have a place to bite. It's hard to glue onto real smooth latex, so I'm going to give that a little bit of texture so that I can, be able to glue stuff onto it easy.
And Dean also asks, or Dean Ray asks, I'm looking everywhere for a good sculpting head online and can't find any at all. I posted that link to David Mosher Effects.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much. You remember, Mosher is the man. He has the best head form, I think, right now on the market for making latex masks. It's even good for silicone. I use my own head because I have a life cast. You may not have a life cast. I bet most people don't. And I have a large head, so I know I don't have to really work too hard to account for shrinkage. If it fits my life cast, it's going to be tight on me, but it's going to be nice for others. Where I hurt people, I have no neck. The sides of my head and my neck are the same width. I'm touching my neck right now, and I'm not really going in. It's kind of straight down. And it's also not very long. Lots of people have much longer necks than me. So a mask that's made on me, it'll sit up here on people. So often I'll just cut this off, and I'll let fur go down the rest of the way where their neck is.
Ooh.
And I'm kind of gorilla-y, so a lot of the things sculpted on my head look a little bit like a gorilla. My wife just said, "Hooray!" from the kitchen.
What?
Apparently, she likes gorillas.
All right. New question from Mutt R. Which is more comfortable to wear, a latex or a silicone mask?
I think a latex mask is, because you have room to breathe. Silicone is it's going to be right on top of you, and it's going to be right on top of you the whole way. So there's no airflow like you can get in a latex mask. So a properly designed latex mask is going to be more comfortable than a properly designed silicone mask. Again, I have a big head, so all silicone masks want to squeeze the crap out of me because they're trying to get back to that smaller shape. I am just throwing some wrinkle lines on here. I'm just going to see what these look like. I'm not married to them. I might brush them out completely, but I wanted to throw some on here so I can kind of get a feel for them. They're very rough. They're very tool marky right now. So I'm going to do a lot of brushing down in order to smooth these out and make them look less like I dragged it through clay and more like a natural wrinkle. All right. So I'm getting some wrinkles on now, and these wrinkles are the biggest wrinkles that there are. I don't even count this as texture. Yeah. This counts as part of the structure of a thing.
Anyway, she's watching Google.
Okay. So this is kind of part of the face, and I'm going to get into micro wrinkles and small wrinkles and stuff as soon as I have time. I've got 45 minutes left in my 2-hour time limit, and I have no teeth in yet. Teeth always take about 20, 30 minutes. So I'm going to be hurting to get this sucker done on time. I also notice right now my mouth is uneven. It is wider on this side than it is on this side. So I'm going to fix that. It's not a lot, it's just a little, but I want to get that fixed. I'm going to go in and start picking out wrinkles and stuff here soon.
Sean King says, wow, I'm really disappointed a lot of my Facebook friends are not here. Shame on them. As in, who would turn down a free lesson from the master?
I would not say that I'm a master. I'd say I'm okay. All I hope to do is I hope to state things in a way that makes sense to you. I might say something that you've heard other sculptors say 30 times, but if I say it in a different way that captures your attention, or I say it in a way that you can retain it and use it while you're sculpting, that's all I'm trying to do. I'm not a master. Nature is the master. Every sculptor is a student. The forms that happen out there, the forms that happen in animals. When a sculptor kind of sees the beauty and the form and the pucker, even in like a hair lip or a damaged eye socket. I mean, there's complex structures going on, and there's cause and effect that can be seen in the skin. And if you can make that happen, or if someone can help you make that happen by wording things in a way that makes sense, then hooray. One of the reasons I like the Stan Winston stuff so much. Don Lanning does sculpting videos for them. He is amazing, and he says stuff in a way that I can retain. He helped my ears tremendously. I put a worm in there that's going to be my gums. He helped my ears tremendously by talking about the fat that an ear is made of. It's got to look like fat, because ears aren't bone, ears aren't rigid. You know, there's fat in there. So he puts a kind of a dimple in the ear. I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense. He said it in a way to help me retain it. All right, so now I've got I made like a gully in the lip, and I'm going to just get enough clay to make gums. And by make gums, I just mean I'm going to put a worm in there. I have a lot of those double-ended tools. Now I'm looking for a tool that is not double-ended, like this one. So I just have the end of a brush. Now I'm going to use the end of my brush to push in where teeth are going to go.
Now, are you going to make the teeth out of clay as well?
I don't know. I've got a whole drawer of teeth over there that I might use. And sometimes your gums affect your upper lip. So I'm going to pull that upper lip out, you know, because if you've got something pushing against your lip, it sticks out. Think about somebody wearing bad fangs, you know, their lips look a little funny because of the plastic under there. I'm going to go look in my tooth drawer. I'll be right back. You'll see me, and I can hear you. Mostly what I have right now is big pumpkin teeth. So these are obviously too big for the mouth that I made. So I'm not going to use them. Now, could I cut them down here and just use that bit? Absolutely. But I kind of want to sculpt these teeth too. So I will be sculpting these teeth. I'm not going to sculpt them yet because they're going to dry out too fast. They'll be one of the last things that I work on. I've got 40 minutes, and I want to finish my structures in here, up in here. I feel this is pretty good and kind of solid. This is a lot puffier on this side than it is over here, so I'm going to knock that back a little bit. In the beginning, I'm framing the house. And while I'm framing the house, there's all these big, sexy changes that happen. Right now, I'm kind of doing the plumbing. From the outside of the house, from looking at it, you're going to see very slow, very small amounts of change. But change is happening, and all these little steps are important, but they're not the big, sexy changes that you get from slapping the first amounts of clay or moving the eyebrows around. They're smaller and less sexy, but they contribute to the whole. Just because the nose openings are kind of bugging me, I'm going to use my my little Kemper tool here and really open up these nostrils. The deeper that I go with these, the more of a nub it's going to be in the plaster. Because I'm going to make a mold, and where it goes in, my plaster is going to stick out. So it has to be deep enough to where I can easily trim the nostrils out so that my actors can breathe. And it also has to be not so deep that that bit of plaster snags on the latex of the mask and causes a problem.
Gary Panko asks, when cleaning out the negative, teeth can be a pain in the butt. Any secrets for sculpting that might make things easier down the line?
The only thing that makes teeth a pain in the butt is your lips. Watch your lips, because you can make an undercut that makes it very hard to get to the teeth. I clean almost all of my molds out with a power washer. That's how I get water-based clay. It's water-based, so I can destroy it with water. So I use a power washer for most of my cleaning, and as long as the power washer nozzle can reach it, that clay is going to leave. Another reason why I like water-based clay. Oil-based clay is harder to clean out. You've got to use solvents. You have to, kind of heat your mold up sometimes. Just a pain in the butt. I don't know why people like doing that. If you're a hobbyist and you're taking a long, but I'm sculpting in 2 hours. I'm not going to take a long time on it. Ear. I'm now at the point where I have to start getting my ear finessed. There is a Y inside of all ears. So I am using my tool to make that Y. See the Y that I just made? There is also a fish hook, which is this edge of the ear. That little dip right there is kind of the fish hook. And there's a hole. I take what I take out of the hole, I put that in half, because there's also a flap. And this flap, it looks like, back in our evolution, we could seal our ears with it, but it's that little weird nub right here that looks like it used to be able to just cover the whole of our ear when there was a muscle attached to it, but now that's gone. And it's completely vestigial and useless. But there it is. And just like noses, people are experts in ears and they see them all the time. That collection of shapes is burned into people's brain, and I pull out what I need to pull out, and then I muddy it up really nice with the brush. And another thing people don't realize about ears, the middle of your ear sticks out further than I got weird old beard in the way. The middle, this is the middle part of my ear. It's outside of this. It sticks further out than the outside of my ear. This is sticking further out. It does on most people. People don't think that because of how ears are drawn most of the time, but this middle part should actually stick out a little more than the outside of the ear. I don't have the pad of the ear on yet. Circle, bam, put that right there. Now, that's a lot more ear-shaped. I'm going to go and do the other one.
As my connection went all wonky, I don't know if this has been asked or not, but do you leave the teeth out when you mold the mask? How do you avoid an undercut?
I'm going to have an undercut in the mouth. From plaster to clay, I will have an undercut. But I'm not worried about that because the clay is malleable and so is the latex. As long as it's not a huge undercut, I'll be fine getting it out of there. And I also think in terms of it needs to kind of be, it needs to taper just a little bit. As long as your teeth taper well. The hardest kind of tooth to get out is an incisor if it's all done by itself, because
That's what I'm watching.
cut this off. This front tooth, so it's basically like candy corn shape with the fat end to the bottom. Well, this is up in the teeth, so all the latex is wadded up here, and it's got to go through that tiny little hole. So you know, I often will back the back fill them with clay. This is just a front, and then it can kind of peel out. And I'll show you that when I get more to my teething. I'm doing that Y again. Y. Peel off some of that too much. Ear hole. Half of my ear hole material becomes the flap. And I'm just going to mud this all up before I put on the pad. And there's some, I mean, look at pictures of ears. Ears are one of the easiest things to be lazy on as far as sculpting goes. I used to do just real blunderful ears. They were terrible. But people knew it was an ear, and I moved on. And I don't cheat that much anymore. I probably don't give them as much time as I should, but they ain't as bad as they used to be.
Special Effects 101 says, when molding a sculpt, do you plaster and only plaster, or do you use burlap or something like it to reinforce it?
Most of the time, I just use plaster. But my molds are going to be an inch thick, and often thicker than in 1 inch. Because I'm going to make a lot. The most common mistake is too thin of an area. You know, you can almost see light through it. It's eggshell thin. And that doesn't help you. There's no point to it. So all my molds are thicker. I'm going to make my mold wall about this high off, and it's going to be just a smooth dome all the way. It's not going to follow the contours of the face. It's going to be a smooth, eggy dome because that's how much plaster I'm putting on it. And I don't use burlap. If I drop one and there's burlap in it, that burlap, yes, it'll keep it from falling all the way apart, but it'll also keep it from fitting back together nicely. Imagine if there was fabric in a teacup when it broke. It'd be real hard to get it back together in the right shape. But if I drop my mold or teacup without it, it's got clean break lines that just fit right back together perfectly, and there's nothing in the way. Then I can glue it and fix it. But the secret is don't drop your mold.
Do you use just plaster of Paris, or do you use hydrocal, or what do you use?
I do not call it plaster of Paris. I call it plaster of peril because it's garbage and it gives you problems for your whole life. It's inconsistent. Different makers have different formulas, and they just change. And you don't have any consistency from it, so it stinks, is what I'm trying to say. I use mostly UltraCal 30 because you can bake UltraCal 30. We do a lot of prosthetics work, so if I'm only going to have one kind of plaster in the shop, it's going to be UltraCal 30. Slightly better for latex mask making is hydrocal. Hydrocal is very nice. It's a good working plaster, but you can't bake it or else it'll explode because of how it holds moisture. UltraCal 30 doesn't do that. UltraCal 30 you can bake. So I use UltraCal 30. I also use hydrocal. If I'm only going to have one, I have UltraCal 30. If I'm only making latex masks ever, then I'm going to use hydrocal. What does Jordu Shell mold his masks with? Hydrocal. It wicks latex at a better rate. Plaster of Paris is kind of plasticky almost. It's not a good plaster, and it doesn't wick as well as hydrocal or UltraCal does. Now, if I were really good, I'd have a mirror so I can kind of look at both sides at the same time. But I'm not. I don't. I'm eyeballing it, and I'm okay with that. So on these ears back here, I'm going to have fur right up to the back of the ear. That ear fold is going to be a big undercut that no one's ever going to see. So I am seaming that, almost like I'm caulking the tile on a tub with clay. So now I've got a nice smooth out to my ear, which is not going to give me any problems in cleaning out the mold or pulling the mask. And I've got to do it up on top on this other ear. I am checking my time.
A little under a half hour.
That's right. So I should be detailing, not putting on ears. I'm running a little behind. Story of my life. It's all right. I'm going to take my favorite wrinkle tool, which is a popsicle stick, and now I'm just going to flim-flam my way through a bunch of facial wrinkles. Because I know that the direction that they go this way. They come this way down here. They kind of turn along the jawline, and they go through here. I'm not going to do much on the neck because that's all going to be fur. Now, you can burn yourself by doing that, okay? I can burn myself by saying that's all going to fur, I'm not going to use it. Because often I use sculpts for a lot of different things. So if I don't do anything on the neck, then I always have to do fur on no matter what I use it for.
Another question here from R. What's the advantage of plaster mold over a gel-lined fiberglass mold?
It'll wick latex.
Yes.
I'm making a latex mat. A fiberglass mold, a silicone mold, is basically a plastic bag or a plastic bucket. My latex comes in a plastic bucket and it never hardens. So if I take it from one plastic bucket and I put it into another plastic bucket that doesn't breathe and doesn't wick latex, I'm going to have a harder time making a mask. Whereas stone is going to suck the moisture out of that latex. Can you put in a layer and then dry it with a hair dryer? Sure, that's possible. It's also a pain in the butt. And I am kind of about speed. Some people are all about base. I'm all about speed. So I want the plaster to do the drying and curing work for me.
Special Effects 101 says, okay, I have a question about the Hydrocal and UltraCal. Where is a good place to get it? I've seen it on Monster Makers, but they're shipping to be pretty expensive.
Their shipping is actually very reasonable for the weight. You buy it in 100-pound bags, but I don't ever buy from them. Look up a ceramic supply store somewhere near you. There is one within a 4-hour drive, and it's worth it. I drove the other day to my ceramic supply store. It's about a 50-minute drive for me, downtown Dallas, and I bought 3 bags of plaster. They're about $35 a piece, maybe 40. I bought 3 bags of plaster, and I bought 800 pounds of clay. I use a lot of clay and plaster. You can just buy yourself one bag of plaster, and if they're going to have pottery plaster, they might not have UltraCal. They're probably going to have Hydrocal. All right, they'll probably have Hydrocal. So availability could be an issue, but a ceramic supply store. Google ceramic supplies, biggest town near you. Ceramic supplies, Atlanta. Ceramic supplies, Minneapolis. And places will pop up. Call them, because they're normally an industrial company. Industrial companies aren't really with it on the web, so often they don't have a lot of information, or they have crappy websites. So call them and ask, do you have Hydrocal? Do you have UltraCal 30? And they will. If they don't have those, ask, do you have #1 pottery plaster? #1 pottery plaster is better than plaster of Paris. #1 pottery plaster is what Distortions uses. Now, all of the sculptors who work for Distortions don't like that they use pottery plaster, but it does wick latex very fast, so they use pottery plaster. But when Jordu Shell molds his own masks, he uses Hydrocal. Was that the longest possible answer to that question? A ceramic supply store.
I usually find mine in a building contractor, builder supply place.
Sometimes they have it, but they're a lot more hit or miss, and they have to be a real good one to have it. And they're going to have Hydrocal. They might have UltraCal. Sometimes they use UltraCal and Hydrocal molds, so they might have it. Tooling and machining. That's another place to look for. So can you guys kind of see he's coming along here?
Yeah. Every once in a while, my puppy wants to take a look. Of course, I think she's thinking I've got something on the desk for her to eat. Then she gets mad when she can't find anything, and she starts yelling at me.
Well, I will not fault puppies. All right, I'm going to throw a few weak chili wrinkles over here in the neck just because I don't want it to be without anything. I'm not going to do any neck muscle detail. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to do some wrinkly lines. That'll A, help a piece of fun fur glue onto there. B, have some texture in case I ever make this be an orc mask as opposed to a Krampus mask.
Mm-hmm.
That way there's something on the head and not just nothing. It is 9:39. I got about 20 minutes. I do think I'm going to commit on this guy, though, and do horn nubs. And I could sculpt horns on this. That is quite possible, that I sculpt horns on it, and then I mold it, and when I pull one out, I've got horns and all. But I find if I sculpted the horns on it, it's kind of going to be those horns every time, no matter what. And if I just sculpt the nubs to attach horns to, I then have options of I can do different horn styles to have 4 of these masks next to each other, and then they have different horns and they have different different paint jobs and different fur colors, and then there's enough difference where you can't tell it's the same face over and over and over again. So that's why I'm not going to sculpt full horns on it, because then I'm limited to one horn style on each finished mask. But I will sculpt nubs, which will help me get horns.
Mean old drunk says that the dang Krampus would make a great Nosferatu.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, when monsters are gray and bald, they've got a lot of similar traits. They got a good low brow. They've got those big cheekbones. They've got kind of pointy chins. Angles are scarier than round. If something is really round, it's cute. Think about Cabbage Patch Kids. Think about Chucky. He balanced that line between cute and scary. He had that round, cherubic head. Baby animals are cute. They have real big, round eyes. And, angles are a lot scarier. So I work a lot of angles into what I'm doing. I guess that's a little bit of my style. It's a little bit of, just how I do stuff. I'm just making up some lines now, which are kind of alien anatomy here that doesn't really exist. But I want to have some texture back there that's under the fur, but in case I ever do this mask not as a Krampus, and actually making this center line here kind of made a center line down the head will actually give me some nice opportunities for texturing.
Use Klingon.
Kinda, yeah. Bit of a heavy nose for a Klingon.
One more quick question from Special Effects 101. Sorry, beginner mask maker here. Where is the best place to buy slush latex?
Fright Props is really great. Screamline Studios is really great. Don't get anything less than 5 gallons at a time. Fright Props, Screamline Studios.
Now, they're usually at conventions, though. I haven't seen Fright Props have latex at conventions, but Screamline Studios does.
And if you call Fright Props and say, hey, I'm going to Trans World, will you bring me 5 gallons of latex to buy? They'll bring it.
Oh, cool.
A lot of the companies, if you call them ahead of time and say, hey, I want to buy this or this, can you bring it to the show? It's a great way to save yourself on shipping. I'm going into my ears now, and I'm just pulling. I'm pulling these lines on the ears together to really help bring that point home. And now I'm going in with a brush to make that feel less like a tool mark and more like wrinkles are happening. I'll do the other side. Okay. See, this looks terrible. That hasn't been blended out at all. It's just terrible, terrible. But take a brush to it, and it starts looking much more natural. Less dramatic, more natural. They have texture stamps too, where you can take you might paint latex onto a rock or onto a tree, and then you can take that and press it into your clay, and you'll get that texture on your clay. That's another fun way of doing textures. What kind of puppy is that I hear?
Jack Russell.
Oh, Jack Russell terrorist.
Yep. She's not happy the fact I'm ignoring her. So I bring her up on my lap, and then she starts throwing a fit because she doesn't want to be on my lap. And then I set her down, and she wants on my lap.
So I'm looking at this guy now, looking at this guy. You might be thinking to yourself, well, that kind of has a fat head. Well, I sculpted it onto a fat head because that's me about 35 pounds heavier than I am right now. Because when I was big and fat, I said, hey, let's get a head cast so I can really feel bad about myself.
Oh.
You every, pore and such. All right. I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing here. I know I've got about 15 minutes. I'm just taking this big old sponge and I'm wicking up some of the water. And because this water-based clay is so soft, it's also giving me a skin texture. You guys see the difference?
Yikes.
Don't want to make you motion sick, sorry. All right.
Nope. Didn't see anything. We saw Christy's dog, though.
There you go, right there.
What you were showing.
So right there, here's the cheek, and now here's the regular old sponge. If I press it on, I actually pick up some texture from it. It dries it a little bit, it picks up some texture, and that's nice. The issue is that everything is going to have that sponge texture if I sponge the whole thing. And you want a variety of textures across your face. Okay.
Jason Daniel asks, sorry, am I interrupting somebody? Okay. I'm working on a static mask for my first client. Is latex or polyfoam a good medium?
I'd say latex is a good medium for a mask. Polyfoam is going to require a different molding process and molding material. You will want to use a fiberglass mold probably, or a resin mold, in order to make a polyfoam positive. But polyfoam is still going to be a little foamy. You have to get a self-skinning foam. I would probably go with latex. Static props for haunted houses, honestly, should be made out of plaster. Not out of fiberglass. Because that material is going to hold up. It won't break down. If it's just a static creature, it should be fiberglass. Because that's going to stand the test of time and not fall apart. As soon as you make something out of latex, it's going to fall apart in 7 to 8 years. UV light hurts it. UV light makes it break down. Water makes it break down. Sweat makes it break down. If a mask makes it 5 years in a haunted house environment, that's pretty good. So if it's a static thing, I highly urge you to make a silicone mold and make it out of fiberglass, which is a little more expensive route. There I go again, having opinions.
Yeah.
Well, you have that experience, though.
And fiberglass is just not going to break down on you. They should sell figures out of fiberglass because you can, in a silicone mold, it'll look every bit as good as latex, but it won't break down. All right, I want to find my super fine wrinkle maker here. That's this guy, little wire loop tool. I'm looking at him, and I'm looking just for areas to pick out. And I'm actually going to flatten these cheeks a bit so that I can put a different texture on them. And yes, I kind of undid a lot of work that was there, but if it's not really good work, then I'm not worried about it. And it wasn't. I'm looking for right now a clean, dry brush. There's a 1-inch brush. I'll just knock all the clay off of it so that I can brush this out. And now my cheeks are kind of smooth. I'm going to hit it with that to calm down my brush marks. And now in those areas, I can take that wrinkle tool I just showed you, and I can just start carving in some real stuff. So kind of a shaky hand, just some different wrinkles and crisscrosses through there. It's going to kind of look like elephant skin when it's done a little bit, all these big just chunks.
Going back to the latex and polyfoam question, in addition to that, rather, it's a static mask, so it's just going to have eye holes, and he's going to fabricate around it.
Well, latex is easy to build up on. I mean, you know, that's not a bad way to go. Latex isn't a bad way to go, but it's not a permanent solution. Especially if it's going to be in, I think I heard it was going to be in a hearse. If it's going to be in a hearse, it's going to have UV and high temperatures. So latex is going to get chewed up pretty quick. You're looking at 2 years before it starts to break down. If you know about your latex composition, look for something with low solids in it. Depending upon who you get your latex from, you can find that stuff out. Low solids means it's going to have a little bit more heat resistance. Low being about 65 parts, I think, per 100 is what it breaks down to. I kind of forget. You'd have to look at it, but that's close. I'm working on some wrinkles under the eye, and I'm also working on cleaning up. I want a definitive line where I cut for this eye. I don't like wishy-washy cut lines. I want to know where my ears get cut. I want to know where my eyes get cut. I want to know all that. Every time I run this down the sculpt, this is filling with clay. And I have to just pick that off every time. So I now have this big old wad of clay in my hand. But if I kept going with that clay on there, then it would build up, and I would get different textures than I want, because I would get the little lines I'm making and boogers. And I want like 40% less boogers. And now I'm kind of breaking up the ridge here with a few lines on the nasolabial fold. But again, I don't want to go crazy and do this texture everywhere, but I wouldn't mind mirroring this texture somewhere like down here in the chin. And, you know, and now I'm doing stuff that's real small. It doesn't really change the look of the house. Before I said I was doing plumbing. Now I'm doing like light plate covers, you know. It's not anything major that I'm doing, but it does have an effect on the appearance. And now I'm just toning that down with a sponge, get the tool marks out of there, make it look a little more normal. I'm going to pull up some super fine lines from this top lip. Kind of this tool on its edge, not even on its loop. I'm going to split the bottom lip a little bit. Same fashion. I don't even know if you guys can see what I'm doing or tell I'm doing anything. I know on the old camera you couldn't, but maybe on this one you get a little bit better idea of what I'm doing and what's going on. I'm going to point these a little bit more. I like that pointiness. I'm going to come in with this tool, just sharpen the corners in there.
Gary Pinkow asked a good question. He missed a little bit, but he heard static elements should be made out of fiberglass. Sounds great, but how on earth do you get fiberglass to follow a detailed negative like a mask mold?
You don't use a plaster mold, use a silicone mold. If you're going to pull something that's rigid, you need if you want a solid finished piece, you need a flexible mold. That's largely true. It's true enough for me to say it and feel good about it. So you do a silicone mold instead of a plaster mold, and then you mix in some polyfiber or something to thicken up your fiberglass, and you just paint in that first layer where it's like peanut butter. You microwave for about 30 seconds where it's kind of pasty, and you can paint that right in your silicone mold with great detail. You're not going to lay it up the same way. You'll paint in your gel coat will be a thickened fiberglass. All right, so here's where I look at what I'm doing, and I'm a little sad because this Krampus's mouth is too small. That upsets me. I need a big mouth on my Krampus to show impressive teeth and for a lot of breathing room. So I'm going to change this whole dang thing and cut it up, you know. That's what I have to do. So I'm going to find a good tool for cutting. That's a good one, little dental tool. I think this mouth is too small. It's not open wide enough. And I have some chin area that I can bring this down into and feel okay.
3 new comments on the YouTube site. First, how would you go about attaching horns to the finished mask?
I actually have 2 videos on me making Krampus masks, and I show how I make the horns and then how I attach the horns. But basically what I do is they are, I do wire frame for them, and then I build them out of plastic. But I'm going to make nubs on this so that I know exactly where to attach my horns every time. So now I've just cut this piece. I've got to make it fit back in. I got to blend my seams. I'm going to have to do texture again, but it's worth it because now I have a mouth that is open wider than it was before. How much wider? By that much.
Graves of the Groves, if you had to walk away from your sculpt, say overnight, what would you do with it to preserve your work?
I would spray it with water and cover it with a garbage bag. In the summertime, I might dunk a towel in water, wring it out, put it over top, then put on the garbage bag. Rainy day like today, I might not even spray it. I might just cover it with a bag and walk away. There's enough moisture in the air to keep it calm and to keep it from cracking.
And Special Effects 101, my first latex mask I made a couple of weeks ago was way too small. How can I fix that? It was a half mask.
Remember earlier I said that people's first masks were normally too small? Latex shrinks 15 to 20%. If you are sculpting it on a head form that is person-sized, add an inch of clay. If you are sculpting it on a head form that is too small, go ahead and build it up by 3 or 4 inches or so, because most mannequin heads are much smaller than actual people's heads. So don't use a mannequin head. Don't use a styrofoam head. Go to Mosher Effects and get yourself a nice sculpting bust. CFX makes a nice one too. Monster Makers has a nice one. You know, there's lots of companies who have them. I'd like to get off my butt one day and make a. I want to make a sculpting bust that comes apart, so you can make one-piece molds. If it interlocked, and then you could pull a piece out of the bottom to unlock it, and then pull all the pieces out, you wouldn't have to do the mold wall for latex masks. So one day I'll get that done and get that out, but for now, lots of other guys are doing it.
And you'll do a video when you do that, right? Yes?
Sure. But I'll also sell them on my website.
Awesome.
It's so funny that a lot of times I'll do a YouTube video on how to make something, and then people will message me and say, hey, can you make me one of these? I'll buy it. Or how much? And the answer is no, I just showed you how to make it. All right, so I've got a more open jaw now, bigger mouth on him. I kind of like that. I'm going to push these guys out a little bit just so they feel a little better. I'm at 10 o'clock, and I have no teeth in. I'm pretty happy, except I have no teeth in, and I don't have my horn nubs, which, sue me. I'll probably go until 10:30. But I think you guys would rather I have a finished product rather than I stop on time unfinished.
Keep going. I'm happy.
And if anybody wishes to leave, of course, they are more than welcome to. Or has to leave, even. Teeth. I am very simply making little cigars with pointed ends. You know, I'm kind of taking a piece of clay, giving it a rollio so it gets pretty pointed.
How well do those hold up when you go to do the mask?
Well, when I mold, they're all going to be one piece.
Ah.
You know, they're all latex. They're all connected. I'm sculpting in separate pieces, but it's going to be one piece.
I just worry about those breaking in the process.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm going to go and I'm going to tamp them down a little bit with a tool once I get them all in place. And kind of build up the gums around them. That'll hold them in well. But yeah, if I can make it work here.
New question on YouTube from R. Before you make a mask of the sculpt, should you pull a cast of the full sculpt just so you have it in case you need to remake the mold?
No. Here is why. You can. Yes, you can, certainly. And if I were a company and if I hired a sculptor to do the work, I might do that. But I did this work. And a year from now, I will be a better sculptor than I am today. So if I'm going to do the work to remake the mold, I'm going to show what I learned and redo the sculpt. If you have no faith in yourself and you think that you won't learn anything, and between now and the time that you have to redo the mask, you think, well, then pull yourself a positive and fill it with foam so you can remold that positive as a one-piece mold. Then cut your foam out and pull out your finished mask. Mold. Okay. And you'll notice I did some of the bottom teeth and then I went to the top. That is because if I did all the bottom, I'd have a hard time getting into the top. And for this guy, I want really generic, pointy monster teeth. I'm not worried about incisors or bicuspids or molars. These are just monster teeth, you know. pointy, pointy, pointy. One of the great things about Krampuses is there is no monster that's a Krampus. The Krampus is always a guy in a costume. Now, are they possessed with a spirit when they get in costume? Sure. But it's really fun that they're making their masks as scary as possible because they're guys in costumes. That's very different biologically than this being a creature and me having to think about what it eats, how it closes its mouth. All their masks are sculpted out of wood. They're sculpted out of wood, carved. Amazing, because they look better than a lot of latex masks that are out there. It's amazing work, amazing craftsmanship. And they don't necessarily worry about biologically, can this thing close its mouth, you know, and I kind of like that. I think that's fun. Now, I'm not going much bigger than a human mouth. And the reason why I'm not going much bigger width-wise than a human mouth is because I would like to have the option in the future to cut out these latex teeth and glue in any set of dental distortions that I want to. If I wanted to make this a Nosferatu in the future down the road, I'll cut out these latex teeth, I'll glue in the Nosferatu plastic teeth from dental distortions.
There's a place called Dental Distortions?
Dental Distortions makes fake teeth. And they make the best fake teeth. They're at most of the trade shows. They have a booth. I know they're always at MHC, and they're always at the Halloween trade show that I go to. Not Trans World, but it's a Halloween trade show for resellers. Like, you know, that's where spirits go to get their stuff and things like that. And they're always there. So I'll buy a case. And I'll say, you know, it's 16 pair, I think, in a case. And I'll just mix match 16 pair, and it's a great price on them. And I have them for various projects throughout the year. Sculpting teeth is hard. They have taken the time to sculpt the teeth. I will let them. You know, they're it's not uncommon for me to throw someone else's teeth in my mask. They've already done the hard work. Now, normally I'll ask permission because that's kind of remolding. The pumpkin teeth, I don't really worry about it because I buy cases of them every year, and I figure as long as I throw them away, when I throw the clay away, it's like I used their product. Because I paid for the product, I put it in the mask, and then I threw it away. So, all right, I am teethed.
Hey!
Now, all of my teeth are kind of shaped like this. Here's my lip. I can shoot water in through that gum and get to the tip of those teeth. If my teeth were like this, that water would stop here and not go all the way around. It'd be a lot harder. So the teeth only have that slight curve so that I can get my my water in there to clear it out. So I'm kind of thinking about cleaning the mold while I'm working. All right, I'm going to take a drink of Coke.
Special Effects 101. Where would be a good place to get a head armature? Sorry, missed that part of the answer.
David Mosher, Mosher Effects. Christy, would you mind reposting that link?
It's in the Haunters Hangout.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to the original post that Alan posted on Haunters Hangout, the link is there.
All right, I should now move on and do my horn nubs and call this guy done, but I really want more going on here around the eyes.
And while you're doing that, Gary Pankow said a couple things. Spray it with water and cover it with a garbage bag. Oh, that takes me back. You say that as if we have better things to do on a Saturday night. And do you use the teeth and gums or cut out the individual teeth?
It depends on what I'm putting in there. But normally I'll cut out this whole mouth section and do a little bit of a rebuild. But I can do that on this bust and paint latex and build it up and put in new teeth and then just glue that into the mask.
Mm.
Latex is a pretty versatile medium. I was really upset for a while when latex masks almost went away from the trade shows because of silicone. And latex still has a lot more to give to the haunt industry and to masks in general. Still, you wouldn't know it from the trade show, but most of the masks and haunts are latex. They're not silicone. I don't feel good about giving most of my actors, who I love dearly, a $600 thing to say, here, go use this and scare people. I think that they're going to wreck it. And they do.
Way better than vinyl.
Yeah, hot melt vinyl is another material they make masks out of quite a bit. Super cheap, it rips easy. All right,
Can't
so
repair it.
what's that, Eric?
And you can't repair it.
And you cannot repair it. You can repair latex. You can kind of repair silicone.
Mm.
I'm getting happier with this. You know, he's kind of coming into his own. I'm going to move the camera so you guys can see what's going on. Now, I would have a lot more options for dynamic movement and posing if I was not on a head form. I could do a lot more with the facial movements and stuff. I'm going to count on there being an actor inside of here to do a lot of that work for me. All right, I'm going to figure out where I want my horns, and I'm going to figure out a good way to attach them. And it may surprise you a little bit. Be right back.
Mean old drunk says, well, good night, guys. It's past my bedtime. I will watch the rest tomorrow. Thank you, Alan, for this and all you have done. Good night, Christy and the other dude.
Eric is the other dude. Don't tell Steve. All right. So, having something like a cup that I can just put on here, all right, I could mold it just like that. The plaster is going to come off of the plastic, all right, and I would then have a latex positive of this when I pulled the mask. It looks silly right now, but that's an area for me to attach the horns that I want to do onto. These are on the big side, and it means that I always am going to have horns that are that thick at the base. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does limit me a little bit, and I don't want to limit myself that much. I'm going to try and find a smaller cup. What I'm thinking right now, something like a spray paint lid. I've got plenty of spray paint over here. But right here, I see that I have some Great Stuff lids.
Ah.
These Great Stuff lids will be a good size. They're not so big that I can't cut off this nub and then patch it if I need it to be a smooth mask. And I'm going to put them far enough back to where a hood could hide those holes if it were an orc or something else. It's important that you check this from multiple angles because this horn is actually closer than this one is. I'm going to go a little further back to make them even. I want them to be the same distance up the head and the same distance from the ear. And I think I'm good there. Now, the big cup's made a circle. I'm going to grab something and patch that. I'll be right back.
Nice pants, by the way.
Thanks.
That would be you.
No, we're sending a hangout request. Two, Gary. Two more. I don't know who the hell it is. Oh, J-Wall. Diablo, Todd, Allen, plus 5.
I do not know.
Okay. I have to, this seam where I press that cup in, it's kind of going to go over that and make that feel different. I'm also going to do a build-up area around those horns. If you look at like a ram's horns or deer horns, then you'll see that they have a build-up of bone, which helps support that horn. I want that same thing. So I'm going to do that with some clay.
Now, are you going to leave the great stuff lid in there?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
It's perfectly round. It'll pull straight out of the plaster. I'll give it a touch of Vaseline before I do it. But yeah, it's going right in the mold.
Cool.
I mean, I could sculpt that out of clay if I wanted to, but it's not in the finished product enough where I'm going to upset the guy who sculpted this lid for great stuff. But even if you remold like a mannequin head, you're remolding someone else's work. So you have to, it's a slippery slope. You got to be careful.
Christy's on a hangout.
Okay. I now have the rings done all the way around. What I want to do is I want to give them some good texture. So I'm going to take a short brush, like that guy, which is just one of these that I cut down so the bristles are stiffer.
Yeah, got like a
Get the old clay out of it.
the other morning and when it was
And
Wow.
So we've got nothing right now. It's actually 35 degrees out and raining.
Spencer Snyder on YouTube asks, how would you go about punching hair into a latex mask?
you're going to take a sewing needle and break it so that the eye. This is the sewing needle. All right, this is the end, the eye of the needle. You're going to break it so that it just does. Oh, that's so weird. I want this finger. Okay, I'm looking at my fingers reversed. So it kind of does this deal. Okay, so your needle's broken, but then that hook that you make, because here was the eye, you broke away this part with a little pair of pliers, and this is the pointy end of your needle. Then you can take hair pieces that are twice as long as you want and hold them in a loop. Use your needle hook to grab those hairs, punch them into the mask, pull the needle out, the hair stays in.
Oh!
That's
Do you
called ventilating. You're punching hair.
Get myself moving again.
Do you use a good size needle?
What's that?
Do you use a good size needle?
The bigger the needle, the bigger the hole in your mask.
Gotcha.
I'm pissing away most of my
But
time.
I'll do 5 or 6 hairs at a time. They say you should do 1 hair at a time. Ain't nobody got time for that. That's why you know they do it in the movies and they make
That's
big money because
3 now.
they can spend their lives doing that.
Gotcha.
I cannot spend my life ventilating a costume. So the only time I punch hair is I will do fur, like nice fun fur,
No, they did come
about an inch back from where I want it. Then I will glue that fur down onto the mask to hide the edge of the fur. Then I can punch just in front of that, and I'll do 1 or 2 rows of punched hair to really blend that hairline in.
Hmm.
It's been a long time.
Now, do I normally do that? No. But if I had to do it for film, that's what I do.
I got it.
Hmm.
In a haunted house, it doesn't matter. Now, it doesn't matter to me. It might matter to some other people, and they have a right for it to matter to them. But that is not my style of haunting.
Those are groundbreakers.
I figure that my customers are going to figure out it's a guy in a suit and be scared anyway.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So I'm going to spend my time, which is my money, somewhere else.
Got it.
Okay, so now I've got these like bony protrusions up off the head, which are going to really help support those horns. You know, and I haven't blended that edge down. I want that to feel a little bit different. I am going to now do some nice wrinkles. This is giving me another chance for wrinkles, another chance for texture. So I can do this a little bit
Watching.
and have that bone be supported by skin and what the skin is doing. Because if you had bones there, the skin would react to it. Those forehead wrinkles would kind of change, and they would go around this bony protrusion as opposed to just going straight across your forehead like they would normally. And now for those, like I did before, smoothing out my wrinkles, bit of water, long brush, smooth.
Now, Gary Pankow asks, a lot of discussion regarding ear placement as it pertains to character/creature. Similar thinking when it comes to horns, side versus front, and so forth. Like your Krampus has large horns on the side of the head above the ears, other creatures might have smaller horns on the head, etc. Might be another reason for referencing ZBrush illustrations.
Yeah, I mean, you can reference a lot of stuff. I am thinking about the actor and the balance. I don't want to have to do a huge understructure on this, so it makes sense for me to put the horns in the middle part of the head as far as front to back, because that's a balance point, and not so far on the edges that they stress the mask, and not so high up that they have too much wobble. So this placement is the path of least resistance for horns. I can just do latex horns that slip in glue over there if I want to make molds. I can make a couple different styles. Now I can make 2 horns that do this and curl forward, or I could flip those in the same horns that I molded, because my nubs are the same size, flip them, and then I have horns that do this and go back. So I've put myself a lot of horn versatility in there. I could do short horns, you know, but he's absolutely right. I've seen a couple designs where they're right almost on the forehead, and they come forward and then back. Nice looking, but I know the limitations of the horns that I make, and I would need a structure under the mask to support them. and I'm not going there on this route right now. So now I have
Run up on
horns in.
camera.
I have horn nubs on. I have my ears on. I got teeth in. Am I done sculpting this? Mostly. I could easily spend 2 or 3 more hours just detailing, finessing lines, and just going over it and going over it and going over it. 4 hours is about the time I normally spend on a sculpt, so I've spent 2.5. It would be fair for me to do another hour and a half on this. It wouldn't hurt. The form of the ear going into the head needs a little bit of work, so I'm going to, take a tool and I'll kind of do a little bit of work on that. Is this stuff that you're really going to notice? You'll notice all of them together, but you won't notice each individual thing, and it's going to be pretty boring for the folks who are watching. So I'm going to get him to a good point here and call him done.
And Gary just mentions, great answer for the horns, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not a short answer guy. Hopefully I'm a good answer guy.
Well, it's good that you give your answer and then you give the why behind the answer. It's not just no and leave it at that.
Yeah, that would bug me. Both to do and to hear from someone else. Okay, I see under here, I see a lot of tool marks. I kind of didn't really finish working on it. And now I'm really giving this guy the once-over because what happens here now is going to stay. I have a stabby texture that I did up there with the brush up in that I like, and I'm going to kind of do that on top of this texture here. And this is really small details on the surface of the clay, but the plaster picks it up. Plaster will pick that up no problem. I got a booger in my nose. Pull that out. I see another chance to put a little more detail in here. I'm going to go ahead and take it. I want to find my real pointy Kemper tool. I think this one's my most pointy. This one's close, but this one's a little pointier. So I'm just going to carry this center line I kind of have in here down. And you can't see a lot of that from the camera. It's very much a detail. Hit that with a bit of sponge, just flatten those shapes out. Just any area that's too flat, anywhere that looks untreated, I want to treat. All right. I'm looking at its profile. I'm looking at the profile of the brow. I'm looking at the chin and how the chin interacts. I'm just doing a little bit of stabbing to figure out how much clay I have everywhere. I want to make sure I've got at least a ½ inch. No problem. I figure my fur line is going to come up here, down, cut down here for the chin, back up, and then I'll lay some hair over top of that. I'm going to go around the ear, up here, and then around from the top of the head, almost down to here on a lot of them, but I could stop up here some too. A lot of Krampuses have this design where their fur doesn't start till the top of their head, and I kind of like that. So, any more Krampus questions, guys? Because we are very close to finished here.
No questions on Facebook.
I am popping for texture up top.
Oh, Miss Lisa asks, a 40 or 42 gauge felting needle can be used to add hair to the mask. Oh.
I don't know what those gauges mean, but I'm sure that she is correct. I use a lot of wool that they use for felting, wool roving. I use a lot of that for mask hair. If you guys see my ROUS video, all the ROUS fur is wool, felting wool.
RUS. What does RUS stand for?
Rodent of unusual size. From
Oh,
Princess.
yeah. I forgot about that. Oh, Logan chimed in. I missed the beginning. So Alan is sculpting a new Krampus to have multiple looks in his haunt, or is he replacing some old masks because he has improved as a sculptor, or maybe this is for someone else?
The answer is yes. Once I have the mold, will I pour up a few for my Christmas haunt that's about to happen? Absolutely. Will I make a few and take them to Transworld? Most likely. Will I make a few of these and put them on the Krampus Society's Facebook page for sale? Yes.
Will you take some to Midwest?
I may take some to Midwest. Odds are good.
Buck the trend, Alan.
Buck, which trend?
Latex instead of silicone.
Yeah. Silicone is the big dog right now, and it's just so expensive.
It doesn't breathe. It gets hot. So
In Texas, we have a hard time getting actors to stay in them because of the heat. Our Octobers, we're still 85, sometimes 90.
They tend to be a little thicker, too.
Well, yeah, they have to be strong enough. It's just not as strong of a material.
He got a mask, and they put a cut in the back of it because they must have made him too small, because the split was like that wide in the back. It's probably about almost 2 inches in the back.
Wow. Yeah.
That head.
That's
What company? What was that? Or if you don't want to say.
What was that? Rat?
I don't remember.
I got their water bottle. I don't remember who they were.
They had a water bottle? That's
They
nice.
had water bottles, and I walked up and I said, "How much for the water bottle?" He goes, "Here, it's free." I'm like, bonus.
There you go.
It was.
Got a little haunt swag.
Yep.
All right, so I just added a bunch more wrinkles in there. Can you see that? No, but I did it. I swear.
comment on YouTube. Where did we go? Oh, Special Effects 101. As we all know, this industry can get expensive. Is there a place where people can buy, sell, and trade their mask props, etc. I can't seem to come across one.
Hot swap.
There's a couple Facebook groups that do that. There's a Haunt Swap group that does it. They're actually about to put a classified section on the Haunters Hangout site, which is very cool. So there are places. Haunt World, you can go there. They have a whole classified section on Haunt World, and I think that still gets perused quite a bit. The forums there are kind of not much happens there anymore, but a lot does happen on the classifieds.
That vendor was Bad Jack.
Bad Jack, yeah. Well, maybe in a few years they'll be called Good Jack.
Well, you kind of, if you're a Halloween, you kind of want it to stay Bad Jack, but you want it to be good for Bad Jack.
Better than Bad Jack.
Oh, Gary asks if you've been out to West Coast Haunters Convention.
I have only missed a couple years. I had a booth at the very first one when it was in the baseball stadium. So yes, I go, and yes, I teach at Midwest. So.
Are you going to be at the West Coast this year?
Oh, did he say West Coast or Midwest?
Well, he said West Coast. I always say Midwest.
I was at the first West Coast. I was at the very first West Coast at the School for the Deaf. I was at that one, but I haven't been back since. I really want to go. I loved it out there. I thought it was beautiful. It hasn't lined up well with my year. Just the time that it falls is bad for me to be able to go.
This year's going to be really tricky because it's on May, I think he said 17th to the 19th? 15th
Same
to
weekend
the 17th.
as Midwest.
Midwest is the end of the month. The end of May.
Midwest Haunters?
Yep.
Oh, it's the same. I'm sorry. It's the same weekend as Halloween Extreme in Orlando.
Oh, okay.
That's what it's the same weekend as. And Ed Roberts is a great guy. I love him dearly. I think he runs a great show. But odds are good I'm going to Orlando because there's so much peripheral stuff there to do too, you know.
Oh, well, yeah. Orlando, just being Orlando.
Right. Okay, you guys see any weak areas? You guys see any area that needs some love or needs some toning down? I think this might need some toning down a little bit.
I noticed on the side, the jaw, I don't know if it's me being picky, it's not very strong looking when you look at it from the side. Just the bottom half.
Right here?
A little bit further, like here. Yeah, it just kind of...
Yeah, that's something that I tend to do because most masks are looked at straight on. If I can do a drop chin like this, I cut out all the back of that.
Oh, okay.
For ventilation.
Gotcha.
The sweat and drool that builds up is substantial.
Oh, wow.
So that's something that I normally do. I try to do that because 9 times out of 10 it's looked at straight on, and I kind of cheat that, kind of like I cheat the back of the ears. Because I can also cut this out for venting. I can cut that out for venting, but I do not mind adding it up to help the finished piece. I will bulk it out. If they're right there behind his chin, you know. But now that I pull that down that far, it's harder to cut a vent hole in it without it being seen.
Oh, you can take it back out.
How's that? Can you see a difference?
Yeah, it looks a little bit more prominent. It didn't kind of look like it was just kind of stuck on.
Yeah. Now I just match that texturing up in there. And hopefully that'll be covered by fur. One thing I am going to do, though, is I am going to strengthen the jaw itself a little bit. I'm going to strengthen the jaw itself by pulling away from that neck. That'll help me get with a hard stop on the fur of it, of knowing where to stop furring. It'll also put a bit of separation between the two. I think that actually helps the look a lot.
It's got a lot more definition.
And again, that comes from the model under here has no neck. It's face and then chest. That poor bastard will never get a date. Wait.
He doesn't need a date. He's got a wife.
Right, I'm married. I've been fooling her for 10 years. Okay.
I think she caught on by now.
Probably. She's pretty sharp, actually. So I am going to fix that texture, but I do like the line a little better. All right. Now I'm looking.
Oh, that's a good question. You bring up a good point on ventilation. Are there other areas you generally cut through to add air?
I normally do a split in the back of the mask. That always helps. It comes up to about here. I will cut out behind the ears, and I will cut out the back of the chin there. That's pretty good. I will cut out everything behind the teeth. That'll just be wide open back there behind the teeth. I will expect them to paint their mouth and lips black in order to blend in a little bit better, but it's going to help them breathe. I'll also cut out the nostrils and, of course, the eyes.
Cool.
And I said this early, but I think it's important that we really mark on the mask where it ought to be cut. I don't want anybody to worry about where they cut the eyes. They should be able to look at it and know, oh, that's the cut line. So I'm going to go back in here and kind of redefine where that cutting happens. Because it really, on me, it really digs in right here. I can sculpt all the way up to that point, but I don't want latex sitting right there up against the corner of my eye, so you have to kind of go into here and pull that line forward so that I can cut and have it be comfortable on multiple people's eyes. I'm a little more forgiving about having a mask rest against my eye than some people I have found out. So now I just mark it and I give them the room and the benefit of the doubt most of the time. Well, okay, guys. What do you see anything else? I'm thinking we're good. I'm thinking I'm done.
It looks beautiful.
Looks like a monster.
Definitely.
Well, all right. That's that. I'll give you guys. I'm going to move you a little bit forward. Let him take up a little more of the frame here.
Jason Nichols says, happy belated anniversary.
Well, thank you, sir. Now the back of the head looks pretty terrible. Any of my actors are running backwards at people. I'm going to let them go.
Yeah, that was going to be my new technique.
Well, don't wear this mask when you do it. Well, all right, guys. That's a Krampus.
Yay! Looks good.
All right. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel, subscribe. If you watch this for 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes, then you've already dedicated a large portion of your life to me. You might as well subscribe. Thank you. Have a good day. Happy Thanksgiving coming up. Unless you don't do Thanksgiving. Happy that day of the week, which should be very nice.